What's poppin', guys? We're back with some more of my thoughts and my opinions in today's epic video. So, I'm sitting in my history lecture this past Tuesday? Monday, this past Monday. And for context, the class is about the history of the samurai, right? So, the professor really likes to incorporate like technology into his lectures. And he asks us this question. He asks us what we think about the game Ghost of Tsushima, right? And most of the classes played it. I actually have not played it. It's on the list of games to play, but it's a long list, and right now I'm playing Hollow Knight, so like it's on the list. I'll get to it. But anyways, he asks what people think about it, and they're like, "Oh, it's a pretty good game. It's pretty interesting." And then he talks about it for a minute, and then he goes, he asks us like a philosophical question. He goes, "So this is him speaking. He's like, I've asked many like game designers and like writers this question because I don't have a good answer to it, and I'm curious what they think. So I want to know what y'all think." And he asks if we think that games like Ghost of Tsushima, where you're just going around like killing a bunch of bad guys, basically, like in essence, all you're like the hero killing these faceless enemies and villains, and you're like saving the day, right? He's like, in a game like that, do you need to have faceless enemies that lack an emotional connection from the player to the enemies, essentially? And he was asking this because in Ghost of Tsushima, you're fighting the Mongols, right? And obviously those are like a real people, like they're actual people who had like lives and stuff, who historically, as the game represents, invaded Japan in and like tried to conquer, right? But you're killing like thousands of them in the game. So his question was basically, do game companies have a moral obligation to make like an emotional attachment to these enemies, or can they just be like faceless, just like people you're murdering? And if they do have an obligation, is there really even like a reason to do that? Because would that like ruin the gameplay? Is basically his question. Just like discuss, right? Now, I didn't really have much of an opinion of this at the time, but I've been thinking about it all week because I thought it was a very interesting question. And of all the things he's asked in that class, I want to be real. This is like one of the few things I have enough knowledge to like actually have an opinion on, because I'm not a history major. I don't really know these things. I just think it's a fun class, right? So I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, I feel like it's not a requirement for a game like Ghost of Tsushima for you to have faceless enemies. I think it makes it easier, and I think from like a gameplay development perspective, because you don't really, in a game like that where you're going around and there's like wandering bandits and you gotta like just like stop them and you gotta kill them. Like, you don't want to have the player be super invested in the enemy, because then they're not going to want to kill them, or it's going to feel like, is it going to feel uncomfortable, right? You can't really expect somebody to feel comfortable just like killing, like, if there's a connection between the player and the enemy, they're not going to have a fun time just straight up murdering thousands of the enemy. Just like it's that simple. So I feel like to an extent, from a gameplay perspective, you have to have faceless enemies. However, I think there's an argument to be had that you could make a game that still has this function, but has like in-depth emotional connections to the enemies. In Ghost of Tsushima's case, it would be like the Mongols, right? They could be fleshed out as real people, and like you could explore the fact that they're human, essentially, in the game. It would be fine from a gameplay perspective. However, I think the problem with that is that you would be making a fundamentally different game at that point. You wouldn't be making just like a you're the hero and you're saving everybody by defeating the evil people, the evil invaders, right? Because now it's not just evil invaders, it's like people who are like, in all likelihood, this isn't like their choice. They're not like, oh, I want to go conquer Japan. It's the people, it's the like the cons being like, ah, we've conquered you guys. You're gonna go conquer Japan for us now. You're gonna do this. Like they don't have a choice really. So, but giving the enemies that kind of depth would make it less of a less of a less of what the game is currently. It would be more of like a character story, I feel like, which brings me to my next point, which is that I feel like there's not a lot of great examples, at least that instantly come to mind, of stories where or games where your enemies are not just like surface level, just like evil. But I feel like that argument falls apart a little bit because there's a lot of game like obviously there's a lot of story games where all sides, all the characters have like depth and complexity, and it's not just like, oh, there's a good guy and there's a bad guy. But the problem is I don't think there's very many games like Ghost of Tsushima where there's lots of enemies and you're humanizing all of them. I think most games are good about humanizing like the main villain, if they do that at all. But the one standout example that I thought of, which I don't think is a great comparison, but I think it's an example of a game that does it well, is Undertale. As stupid as that is, it's probably the most well known example of you, at its core, you're supposed to understand your enemies, although the whole point is that are they really your enemies? Like, obviously, Undertale spoilers if you haven't like played the game, which you should. It's a good game, but the whole point is you're like there's suddenly monsters and you're just this like kid, and it's like, do I kill the monsters or do I become their friend because they might? Well, it seems like they want to be my friend, right? So in Undertale, you could either just like kill everything or not kill everything and just make some friends, and then like that's the good ending, and it's so happy, and you get out and without killing everybody, or you can just kill everybody and just get out yourself. But throughout the game, it's like it's a character story basically. It's all these characters like fleshing out the world, and it's if you decide to kill them, they've already been humanized, so you're just like you're just killing them, right? Like you already have an emotional attachment to them, and it's just like I don't really know what the motivation is there besides just like morbid curiosity, I guess. But you they are humanized. They're not just like, oh, these are the evil monsters that you have to kill to get out of here. It's like these are just like people living their lives, and if you're gonna kill them, you're gonna kill them, but you don't have to. The game gives you that choice, right? So it's not like making all of the enemies have depth is some new innovative concept in gaming, if you know what I mean. It's been done, but I don't think it's been done on the scale proposed by the question for a game like Ghost of Tsushima. However, because of that, I feel like the question is a little flawed. I feel like if you're gonna ask if you can have faceless enemies in a game versus why would you not just flesh them out, I don't think you can just ask that question as like a blanket statement. Because at the end of the day, I don't think, at least in my opinion, that having fleshed out characters for the sake of, say, historical accuracy in the case of Ghost of Tsushima is as important as the gameplay itself. And if they're going for the gameplay mechanics like Ghost of Tsushima or like similarly like Red Dead Redemption or something along those lines, I don't see how you would humanize the enemies without making a fundamentally different game. Because I just don't see a world where you could humanize them and just be like, oh yeah, by the way, you've got to kill like thousands of these guys and you have no choice. We're not giving you the choice. You have to do it. That's the only way to beat the game. Because I just don't think it works. Because like the only reason in my opinion that like the Undertale approach works is because you have the choice. But if you gave the player a choice in the game like Ghost of Tsushima, you wouldn't be doing like the hero's arc because you could just choose to like not kill people. But what how do you end the game? It's you just be like, oh yeah, actually I'm just not going to do the story. Yeah, we're done. We're done here. Game's over. Roll the credits. Like I don't think you could make the same game. You could make a different game that's could be just as good, but just a completely different game. It wouldn't be the same thing. And yeah, that's basically my thoughts on this. I have been thinking about this question on and off all week because I thought it was very interesting the way it was proposed in class. Also, the fact that we're even talking about this in the first place in lecture. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I thought it was an interesting question. But also, there's some games that you don't even know anything about the enemies beyond just like they're faceless. It's just like concepts. Like take for example, The Binding of Isaac. You're just playing the game. There's no like sure some of the enemies have like meaning and some of them are like oh it's lore and it's like oh he's trapped in the chest in the closet or whatever. It's like his mom is evil and abusive but like oh what's the dad's deal? It's unclear. It's unclear if this is like real or not. But at the end of the game, at the end of the game, at the end of the day, it's like you're playing the game. I'm here to play the game. It's a fun game. I don't there's no story. There doesn't really need to be a story. Or or other games like Terraria. There's once again, it's just like enemies. Like there's no reason to give background to like the random monsters because it just doesn't need it. Even the bosses don't even have background, or the NPCs also don't have background. Like the guy, I guess the guide kind of has context, but the other ones don't really. They're just like there. They just hang out and do things. And they show up and then they're like, "Oh yeah, I've been in the world this whole time. Like, do you need something from me? I got seeds. I got stuff, fishing stuff. So many things." But they don't have like lore. You don't need that. But in a historical game, you might need that. Maybe for like an Assassin's Creed type game, maybe. But that's even more iffy because those games are like more graphic with the killing. Like it's not like insane because it's Assassin's Creed, but it's more so. It's more so than say like Minecraft. Like I don't know. Even like Call of Duty, I feel like Assassin's Creed can be more brutal than Call of Duty. They exist like Call of Duty, you got guns, and like in the campaigns, there's like real people, but it's mostly most of the Call of Duty campaigns are very surface level. It's like you're the good guy, there's the bad guy, go shoot them, and then you win the game. Some of them are more deep than that, but if it's a historical game, I could see the argument for historical sake because there's no reason I don't because like there's no reason for a game company to have a stake in the depiction of a historical people beyond what they need to do to tell the story of their game and make it align with their gameplay loop, right? But I don't think they have some crazy obligation to be super historically accurate and make sure that both sides of the coin are explored thoroughly. I just don't think it's necessary to make a good game. It could be interesting and it's nice. It would be like a good gesture if they included it in the game, but if you're making like a historical game, like Ghost of Tsushima or anything like that, chances are you're making it based on one side, right? You're somebody on one side of the historical story, and even if you were there, like historically, you probably really wouldn't care about the other side. Like if you were there, you'd be like, "Oh, these people are invading. We got to stop them. I don't really care what their lives look like outside of this combat situation. They're invading. Let's deal with it. Maybe we'll care later, or who knows." So it doesn't seem like there's a real reason to give them depth at the end of the day and make an emotional attachment between the player and the enemies. Unless you're trying to make that an integral part of the game like Undertale does. Is basically my opinion on the matter. So yeah, that's about it. Maybe let me know your thoughts on this. Because I don't know. I'm not completely convinced that my thoughts and opinions on this are complete. I feel like I'm missing something, and maybe you could tell me what that is. So yeah, adios.